We come to Berlin, we American presidents, because it's our duty to speak in this place of freedom. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Welcome to the Fidelis Leadership Podcast, a place of learning for those who aspire to leadership excellence. Here's our host, Mike Etor.
Morag Barrett is a sought-out keynote speaker, author, facilitator, and leading expert on the business and personal importance of cultivating healthy professional relationships at work. As the CEO and founder of SkyeTeam, she supported the development of more than 15,000. Morag's research and thought leadership is showcased in her books and articles. She's contributed to entrepreneur.com and CIO.com and has been featured in Business Insider, Inc., and Forbes magazines, among others. She was recently listed by People Hum and Thinkers 360 as among the 100 most influential leaders to follow. Morag, I'm thrilled you're here. Welcome to the Fidelis Leadership Podcast.
Mike, I'm excited for our conversation.
Well, I see you all over social media. You've got a book launch going on. We'll get into that a bit later, but the intro was impressive, but I think we need to learn a little bit more. Give us a couple more minutes. What do we need to know about Morag?
What do you need to know about me? Well, some of the fun facts. I'll give you 3 fun facts. One is I'm the mother of 3 6-foot boys. I only mention their height because now you know that they are probably nearly off payroll. I once spent a few days at sea with some Estonian sailors, but that might be for a conversation after the podcast.
Yeah, I'm not touching that.
No, not touching that one. No, that was a fun trip, I can tell you that. And the third element, I'll just give you another fun one. When I am not working with leaders around the world or coaching teams, then I'm a ballroom dancer or a classical musician, not at the same time.
Yeah. How long have you been doing the ballroom dancing?
So the ballroom dancing about 12 years. And my youngest son was not 6 foot tall. He used to be my dancing partner. And once he reached 6 foot tall, he said he'd grown out of dancing, which was a real disappointment. But I've been doing it for 12 years. Absolutely love it. Missed it during the pandemic. And it's on my list of things to get back into next year, now that things seem to be easing off a little bit.
Well, I have zero experience in it other than every now and then I'll catch it on TV or the internet, which means it's a high level competition, obviously. And I look at them and I've got enough of an athletic background to know, oh my God. I mean, you talk about athleticism and practice and attention to detail. And I'm sure you're looking, when you watch them, you're seeing things and details that I'm oblivious to because I'm not tutored in the art. But it's amazing. I mean,
it is. It's been one of the most impressive leadership lessons for me, because for the listeners, you'll have gathered as the CEO and founder of SkyeTeam, I am a leader in my company. I'm a leader at home in that I've been the primary breadwinner for the family. And my husband chose to stay home, or we chose that he would stay home and raise the boys. So in every aspect of my life, I've been at the front. Yeah. But as a woman in dancing, I had to learn to follow and give up control. And I also had to get up close with strangers and all of this and do it backwards and in sequins and skimpy dresses. And I looked at it and I thought, well, how hard can it be? Left, right, you know. Yeah. Turns out I have 6 left feet when I was learning to dance. But when it clicks, it is poetry in motion.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, very impressive. Well, listen, before we get going, I always ask this so you can clarify it for the audience. And our audience are people that are interested in becoming leaders or who are already leaders and they want to become world-class leaders. What do you do? What does your company do? Who's the clientele? What do you do for your customers?
So I am passionate about helping individuals and teams to get unstuck. And I was originally going to be an engineer. I ended up spending 15 years in commercial finance, so I know my way around a spreadsheet and numbers. But what both of those taught me was what we do in industry, the widget or service we provide in a company, or how we organize the process and systems and we use, are only half of the equation. The real barrier to success is the who we are as individuals and how we relate. And think about it in our own careers. I know in my own, when I've made a mistake and maybe grazed my knees, dropped the ball on a project, or when I've missed out on a promotion, it usually isn't because I'm not smart enough, you're not smart enough. It's because we haven't invested in how business gets done, the quality of our relationships.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do now, Mike. I work with leaders. A lot of them are in IT, technology, and engineering. So I've been to North Slope, Alaska with oil and gas drillers. I've been down to Chile and Peru to work with gold mining clients. I've worked across industries. And all of them are asking me 3 questions. One is, I want to get to that next level, but I don't know how. The second question might be, I have a team. We can't seem to deliver the results. Politics and silos and turf wars are rife. What do we need to do? And the third is usually with senior leaders, okay, I'm looking at the next generation. Where are our leaders? Where is the talent in our organization? And how do we prepare them for success?
Yeah.
And so in response to that, we're building leadership programs. We're working with intact teams to make sure that we're aligned around the table around definition of success. Or I'm working one-on-one as an executive coach to help that leader either transition to that next level, or if they've already made that transition, to navigate those first 60, 90, 180 days to be as successful as they can.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Well, listen, I always ask another canned question up front. If you were confined to just giving me 2 or 3 sentences worth of your leadership philosophy, what would your executive summary, brief 30-floor elevator ride statement be?
It would say, you cannot be successful in business or in life unless you are successful investing in the health of your professional relationships.
Yeah. Thousands of years will not change. And at the end of the day, leadership is about interpersonal relationships between, at least, once you get 2 human beings into it, it requires leadership and the soft skills and all of that.
And and that's it. It's mislabeled the soft skills. They are fundamental. And I've lost count in my banking career, for example, being told, well, it's not personal, it's just business. Leave your emotions at the door. And we cannot, it's hardwired into our DNA. We cannot leave our emotions at the door. And if we've had a bad interaction or a stressful interaction at home, it's impacting how we show up as leaders. And vice versa. If we have a tough day in the office, whether it's through the camera or in 3 dimensions, chances are that's bleeding out into other parts of our lives. And so recognizing that the human element is the secret to success unlocks it for so many people that I'm working with.
No doubt about it. Well said. The human element, human nature. I don't care. This is Mike talking now, Morag. I don't care how many degrees you have, how many books you've read, how many courses you've done. If you cannot effectively deal with fellow human beings successfully, at least adequately, you'll not be a leader. You'll not be an effective leader, which is why we see so many highly educated, highly accomplished, highly effective individuals absolutely fail as leaders. They don't have the human element, not mastered even to an adequate level. Any thoughts?
Well, think about this. I'll challenge everybody listening and watching this episode. And Mike, you can do this for reals with me right now. But think about somebody in your life that has made a difference for you and helped you to get to where you are today. The colleague you would jump at the chance to work with again. So who's coming to mind for you, Mike?
There's several of them. My first, when you started talking about that, it was my high school wrestling coach. And then, I served in the U.S. Marine Corps for 24 years. So a whole legion of mentors. In business, I had several of them, but I would say the CEO of my company, David Dunkel, really, I never forget how he made me feel as a brand new, right out of the Marine Corps into business. He knew I didn't know business, but he knew I knew leadership. And I'll never forget the special trust and confidence that he had in me. And so, came right to my mind.
So I'm hoping everybody listening and watching this also has at least one person that's come to mind. But think about what you just said. You didn't talk about how smart he was. You didn't mention the number of degrees. You went straight into the killer phrase of, I just remember how he made me feel.
Yeah.
And I've asked that question of thousands of leaders around the world, and we'll do sticky dots and put them onto a Venn diagram. When we think about the characteristics, are they related to how smart this person was, or their technical competence, or was it the people skills? And invariably, it's the people skills. They gave me the tough feedback I needed to hear. They saw potential in me before I thought I was ready and took a risk and promoted me into this role. They coached and mentored me. They opened a door and made an introduction that allowed me to land my dream job. There's so much that goes into that, but it's always the people skills.
Yes.
But the real question here, though, is for the people listening, you're thinking about the people you'd jump at the chance to work with again. Now, if I were to go and ask the people who work around you today, who are the heroes and heroines, the leaders you aspire to, would they be thinking of you? And if the answer is no or don't know, then right now in this moment, in this conversation, is your choice to step up and show up differently, to be that boss, that colleague that others look back on and go, oh, do you remember when we used to work with Mike? Wasn't he brilliant? Yeah. Oh my goodness, didn't Morag help? That's the legacy that we should be looking to create. I
love that. And my follow on to that is, of course, there's thousands of people that deem me brilliant, you know.
I'm one of them. There you go.
I'm just joking, but I love your statements, and I want to throw this out to you. As a leader, you don't have to have all of the right answers, but many people will think of you, me, any leader that's been in charge of people, they'll think of you not necessarily as the best leader they ever had, but if they know, I think the first prerequisite of them remembering a leader is they have to be convinced that he or she truly cared about them. Like, no kidding, truly cared about them as a person.
Look at you, see, another emotional word. And that can be scary for so many new leaders, especially if you think about our schooling. It's all about the regurgitation of facts and logic. And can I graduate in the top 5% of the class? It's me first. It's logic. It's rote learning. But the world of work is a team sport. The human element comes back into it. And it's the, do I know that you've got my back? Because if I don't know that you care, not just about my job title, but care about me as a human being, I'm not going to take informed risk.
Right.
I'm not going to come to you and say, Mike, that's a stupid idea. That'll never work, because I'm going to be afraid that you are going to then shoot the messenger.
Yeah.
So if, as humans, if we're not investing in those relationships, invariably information slows down, decision quality is impacted, and ultimately leadership reputations are undermined every single day.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let me ask you the question that I ask everybody on the podcast. Leaders, born or made?
Made. Now, I'll clarify it. So think about the best leaders that we were talking about earlier. And I'm going to double dog dare everybody listening to get their phone out, open up their email, and whoever you were thinking of, one person, 5 persons, I don't care, send them a message. Send them a message that says, hey, I was listening to the Fidelis podcast with Mike Ettore and Morag, and I was asked to think of best colleagues, and I thought of you, and here's why. Now send that message, because one, it reinforces, it makes the implicit explicit for the other person that you saw them, you recognize that special quality. But I am also going to tell you that the replies that you get back are going to make your day.
Yeah.
And so leadership it's a journey. It's not a destination. I teach it for a living, and I am still learning, and I'm still making mistakes. However, I will accept that in terms of our leaders born, there are some who are born with the innate ability for some of the characteristics. I think about my youngest son, or Ruby Vesley on my team and co-author for View Me We. They are both natural connectors. They lead heart first with compassion. Now, me, I'm a logic first. You heard I was going to be an engineer, and then I'm in finance. So courage, when it comes to the business, I can do that at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
Courage when it comes to tough feedback to somebody, I'm a pussy cat and a scaredy cat. So that's where I think sometimes, like athletes, there are people who have a natural tendency to run fast. I am never going to run as fast as them, but I am an athlete in that I can be made to run a little faster than my starting point, but only if I choose to invest in that, only if I choose how I show up. So I'm going with both, but mostly made.
Yeah, I agree. And your answer replicates, I would say, 99% of the answers to that question. We all agree that there are some people that seem to have aptitude. They're just aptitude, but that aptitude without hard work and training and development often stagnates, just like an athlete that shows promise as a young child and a teenager. It's in America, as you know, we have loved professional sports. There's a whole lot of highly talented, high-level athletes that never make it to the big time because they don't work hard. And conversely, there's a whole lot of what the scouts would say, average physically, average speed, not supposed to be in the big leagues, but somehow he got there or she worked hard and she's in the Olympics. And so I love it. I think the same applies to leadership. Do you?
I do. And it's the working hard, not just on the me or the me first in terms of my goals. It is working hard on the we first, which is why the new book is called You, Me, We. Because if I'm not curious about what you describe as a great leader and how you want to be inspired and led, if I come at it with the Morag only approach, the me first, then chances are we're going to butt heads or have miscommunications. So it's only when we're curious about you that I can overlay the me that then brings us to the we, where we can, in spite of our differences, deliver an exceptional result for our customers or for others.
Yeah, well said. I love it. Well, great segue into your book. I know you've authored or co-authored several books, but I know, I'm seeing you all over social media blowing up with this recent book launch. And so the book is titled You, Me, We, Why We All Need a Friend at Work and How to Show Up as One. Yeah, I love it. I love
doing the plug.
the cover.
Let's see.
I publish books, and my litmus test is when that cover is reduced to a thumbnail, will people see it? And boy, that one, yes, they will definitely take a second look. Yeah, I love it.
And the inside's pretty good too, though I am a little biased, but certainly our advanced readers also concur. And it's bright blue on the inside.
Yes,
too. It's get your hands on this while you can.
Well, that's what I tell people when I give them a copy of my book. I said, let me tell you something. This is the best leadership book I've ever written. Yeah,
they do get better. It's interesting as an experience, like children, isn't it? You kind of shape them. But I've got 3 books out in the wild now. And this one, it was a deliberate choice because I've co-authored it with Eric Spencer and Ruby Vesely, who are my fellow unicorns here at SkyeTeam. And it was deliberate because whilst it builds on my first book, Cultivate, the Power of Winning Relationships, I wanted their voices in here for 2 reasons. One is to elevate them because they've already elevated me.
Right.
And because we live and breathe the concepts that we talk about in the book about how do you show up as an ally, as a best friend at work, where we care for each other's success in a way that we will cheer each other on, but also give each other the swift kick in the pants as needed to help us to go where we need to go together. Yeah. So that's what was exciting about writing it, and bringing 3 voices together. That was an interesting challenge in of itself.
Well, let's go deeper on that. Why did the 3 of you write this book, and who's the intended audience?
All right. Well, so let me start with the origin story. And the origin story is 2014. We're sitting at the bottom of the Washington Monument in DC because we were attending the ATD, the Association for Talent Development Conference, to launch Cultivate, the Power of Winning Relationships. And in this book, and if you can see the video versus just listening to the audio, there is a little roundel behind it where I introduce what I call the relationship ecosystem. So often when things are going well, it's easy to be a good boss. It's easy to be a great colleague. The real test is when the proverbial hits the fan. Who's there to step up and have your back? So I introduce 4 relationship dynamics, the relationship ecosystem. And at the far end of the scale, you have adversaries. On their best days, they're brilliant jerks. On their worst days, they are jerks. It's just toxic. It's hard. Now, nobody gets up in the morning wanting to be seen as a jerk or an adversary. Often it's a misunderstanding of styles or expectations. But then there are rivals where elbow jockeying, when it suits me, I'm all for you. And when it doesn't, I'm against you. So Jekyll and Hyde, you don't know who's going to show up. So in the short term, it might raise your game because you prepare and over-prepare for those meetings. But in the long term, it's just stress and anxiety, much like working with an adversary. Supporters are your fair weather friends. They're, yay, go Mike, you're fabulous. But when you need me, crickets, nothing. Give you the feedback you want to hear, not the feedback you need to hear. And ultimately, allies are the best friends at work, the people who have your back, not just on the good days, but the tough days, and give you the feedback you need to hear, even if it hurts.
Yeah.
So the book was huge, and it had a big impact in transforming culture, organizational culture, team health, etc. However, we were consistently asked, but how do I show up as an ally, especially if somebody else is pushing my buttons? So that was the genesis for You, Me, We. So this is an opportunity for us to look at the 5 practices that we talk about in the book, to understand how do I show up as a best friend for others? And there's a reason for that phrase too. And so the title is You, Me, We, Why We All Need a Friend at Work and How to Show Up as One. Because it's not just about being a friend to everybody else and becoming a doormat or a yes person. It's also about how do I be a best friend for myself, my own needs, my own wants, my own career aspirations. So we cover those 2 perspectives in the book that will hopefully ensure that the readers end up as that best colleague, the people that sigh and go, oh, do you remember when we used to work with? Versus the sigh of relief of thank goodness we don't work with, that you get at the other end of the scale.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's go a little deeper on that. Can you, off the top of your head, I know you're doing a lot of interviews for the book and all that, and rightfully so. Could you talk about and talk about 2 or 3 main lessons in the book, contained in the book?
Well, we had an epidemic of loneliness before the pandemic, and it has only got worse. The camera has given us the illusion of connection, that people care. But what it has invariably meant is actually that you get onto the call, and most of us are into back-to-back Zoom meetings, and we're straight down to business. Where's the project plan? How's it going? What are you doing? Yeah. Not how are you doing?
Yeah.
And in our research and the research from Gallup, it is shocking to me that in our research, for example, 20% of the leaders who've taken our ally mindset profile, 20% say they have no friends at work, not even one. So think about that.
Wow.
We're living and working in the most uncertain and unsettled times. You don't have somebody who you can go to and ask for help. You don't have somebody you can go and confide in if you're feeling overwhelmed or you just want guidance. You don't have somebody who's going to step up and help you out of a pickle. And when I couple that with our ongoing research, 67% of those leaders have then said that their words and their success has been undermined by the words and actions of a colleague. And those colleagues that are doing the undermining, sometimes the boss, but not very often. Sometimes my team, not very often. It's our peer relationships, those horizontal relationships across the organization.
Yeah.
Which brings me back to my opening comment. You can't be successful in business or life unless you nurture those relationships, especially the horizontal ones. And you can't wait for them to come to you. If you're one of those 20%, A, call me, I'll be your friend at work. But B, you need to go first. You need to be reaching out. And again, in You, Me, We talk about how to do that, whether it's through the camera or in 3 dimensions, since we're now returning to the office in some parts.
Yeah, I love that. I want to ask you, or make a statement, ask your thoughts on it. I'm also an executive coach, and I find that most people who are executives or aspire to be executives and, reach the C-suite, they're very attuned on, gotta give the right impression, impress people above them, have to treat people well below them because, got to produce results. I would say over 50% of the time, they lack a solid understanding of how important it is to develop relationships laterally. Mm-hmm. And what I tell them is, look, I was a named officer in a publicly traded company. And at that level, in those size companies, they're not going to promote somebody to C-level that the rest of the C-level executives reject. They're just not going to.
They're not going to do it. Exactly.
So they're not only going to ask the people above, we're getting ready to promote Mike. What do you think? They're going to ask Mike's peers. Mm-hmm. We're getting ready to promote Mike, and what do you think? You are going to report to him now. Mm-hmm. And so if they find out, the C-level guys are okay with Mike, but Mike's peers, boy, well, now it's the moment of truth. We wanted to roll 3 of his peers underneath him. And they're saying, if you do that to me, I will leave this company. Because first of all, I never said anything. I don't like working with Mike. Secondly, there's no way in hell I'm reporting to Mike. And I have personally seen otherwise deserving people not get promoted because they did not cultivate adequate relationships laterally. Your thoughts?
Start today before that opportunity is and that seat becomes open. Start nurturing those relationships, celebrating mutual success. Because it was interesting. I was flying back from New York City last week, having worked with an executive team there, and my seat buddy, we actually got chatting, and he's the CEO of a global insurance company. And he said, well, as CEO, does being a friend at work apply to me? And as we got talking, he realized it applies even more, because if he doesn't have a high trust, high care relationship with the board, they're not going to give him the feedback he needs to hear. And if he doesn't have it with his direct reports, and he did get promoted from within too, then he's not going to get the information that he needs in order to help the team to make informed decisions. Yeah. So being a friend at work doesn't mean we become soft. In fact, being a friend at work means that I can make the implicit explicit and say, Mike, I have your back no matter what. And this is what success means for me and what it means to be an ally. And here's what I need from you in order to continue this nurture, this relationship. So how do you want you to bring me bad news, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And I can also say, and Mike, at some point, I am sure I'm going to have to tell you some bad news. And here's what I'm going to do and how we're going to go about it. That way you're not blindsided. And we can still go out for a drink after work. We can still go, and have lunch together and know about what's happening in our home lives. Because once you've got that foundation of explicit trust, as you said earlier, when we know that our colleagues care, then I am going to show up as my full self. I am going to be willing to say, you know what, Mike, I'm feeling sick today. I can't give it my all. Well, you know what, Mike, one of my kids is struggling with this and I'm somewhat distracted. Well, you know what, Mike, you've just given me this project. I have no idea where to start. But because we have the high trust, high care, friend-based thing, I know you're not going to judge me. You're going to step up and help me to be successful, because at some point in the future, the tables will be turned and I will be supporting you. And it is amazing what teams can do when they can get to that level of psychological safety, is what they call it, and high trust, especially when they are moving into new markets, responding on the drop of a hat to a pandemic, having to adapt to a global supply chain that's gone screwy. That's when you need to know that your team has each other's back and are all pulling to the same end goal of success.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. Well, listen, you mentioned a term in the book quite frequently called the ally mindset. Mm-hmm. And I suspect we've already discussed some of it and touched upon it indirectly. So directly, ally mindset, what is it, and what's the importance of it?
So it's represented by the little pinwheel, again, for those who can watch, and it's 5 practices. Now, some of my engineers have started to argue with me that it's actually 10, but it's 5 practices, but they are double-barreled, but they're double-barreled for a reason. Now, before I go into them, I'll give you a verbal offer. Anybody listening to this episode are free to take their own ally mindset profile. Just go to SkyeTeam, SKYE, team.cloud, CLOUD, /you, me, we. And you'll be taken straight to the ally mindset profile. You can answer the questions. You'll get your own report right away. But in our research with thousands of leaders around the world, as we took the relationship ecosystem from my first book to understand, well, what do these best bosses, these best colleagues have in common? We identified these 5 practices. So the first one is abundance and generosity. And they're double-barreled because they are about the human being, the mindset, and the human doing. Because if you don't have the right mindset, you're not going to do the behaviors. So in abundance and generosity, it's thinking about, do you see success as a scarce resource, something to be hoarded? I've got to get the only prize. Or is it a shared resource? Because if you have an abundant mindset, then you are more likely to be generous with your own expertise, with your curiosity, with your coaching, with your mentoring, with your focus on mutual success versus individual success. So it's the foundation. It's the one that I find the easiest. I mean, call me and I will help coach, mentor you. I love helping others to be successful. So abundance and generosity. That then leads to connection and compassion. So this means, do I connect with you as a human being beyond just the job title? Do I know whether or not you've got kids, that you're a ballroom dancer or aspiring ballroom dancer, that you served in the military and your experience, and how has that informed your leadership style today? And then compassion is, again, showing empathy, especially when we're facing the trials and tribulations of life and when that impacts how we show up at work. So from there we get to, because if we've got connection and compassion, if we have the high care, the high trust that you talked about, Mike, then we're going to get to courage and vulnerability. Courage for me to take risks, vulnerability for me to ask and take help when it's offered. And if we have courage and vulnerability, then we're going to get to candor and debate. Candor being not just lobbing the candor grenade of, Mike, this sucks, that will never work, but also coupled with the debate and the conversation that needs to follow around, and how do we solve for this? So abundance and generosity, connection and compassion leads to courage and vulnerability, which leads to candor and debate. And then the 5th one of them all is action and accountability, because none of this is rocket science. And I know, because I've taught emotional intelligence to rocket scientists, and I have a rocket scientist in the family. My middle son is in aerospace engineering. But it may as well be, because whilst we understand the logic of this, we don't always follow through with the action and accountability.
Yeah.
And a simple example, like health and fitness. I know I should eat healthier and I know I should work out more, but I don't do it still. I just talk about it. So the 5th one, action and accountability, is, am I living up to the leadership legacy that I say is important? Am I following through on the commitments that I am making to you and to the team? Or is it one rule for me and one rule for the others? So those are the 5 components of the ally mindset that if you go to that website that I provided, you'll get your own strengths and gaps and some tips on how can you turn the dial up and be intentional about your leadership reputation.
Yeah, that's well said. And we'll put that link in the episode description. So great descriptions, by the way. I just found myself nodding my head. I was going to start taking notes, and I'm like, well, no, wait a minute. You can listen to the episode, and you're going to read the transcript and all of that. So I haven't read the book yet. I will, though, and everything you just said really resonated with me. So now that you've described the ally mindset a little bit deeper, or maybe a different prism, what's it, the perfect ally mindset? You walk into an executive team, if it was really good, what would you see?
So first of all, I'm going to say it's not about perfection. I've written the book. I've written 2 books on this topic. It is not about perfection, but it is around consistency. And so the perfect ally mindset is around intentionality. In fact, one of my colleagues, Charlene Wheelis, she talks about leadership is choice. Leadership is a choice, not chance. And that's what the ally mindset is, because the perfect version for this conversation is the chatty Morag that is courage and vulnerability, sharing some of my personal stories and mistakes along the way, but with abundance and generosity to help others, for example. But when I'm working with as an executive coach, it needs to be the quieter Morag, the less chatty Morag, who is listening deeply. That's the debate part. And then asking the challenging questions that helps the leader sitting opposite me to get to new insights and new commitments for how they show up. So in the book, we talk about, we end each chapter with look up, show up, step up. Look up is what is needed for this conversation, this meeting, this person. How do I need to show up for them? Is it more empathy because they've just got a family loss? Or is it, I need to be more directive, action and accountability because they need clarity around their goals and priorities? So look up is what is needed. And then show up is where do I need to turn the dial up or down? And then finally, step up is the reflection of, did I do my best?
Yeah.
And the grace, and it goes back to not perfection. At the end of the day, if I look back and think, oh, Morag, you talked a bit too much when you were on the podcast with Mike. Your answers were too long. Okay, let it go. Shake it off. Yeah. Because in my next podcast, I can think more deliberately about showing up with sound bites. And that's the whole thing we're trying to get to, which is leadership is a journey. And leadership and your relationships, they're built one conversation at a time. And if this conversation fell flat, okay, don't just keep doing the same old. In the next conversation, think about how you're going to show up differently. If you miss out on this promotion, okay, which relationships do you need to invest in? And how will you show up differently at the next interview so that you do get that promotion that not only you deserve, but you aspire to because others now see that potential in you?
Yeah, I love that. I want to throw a statement or two out and we're going to go off. I was by any definition a successful leadership career in the Marine Corps, and then, a highly paid C-level executive in a publicly traded world. So I did well, retired at 57 and then got into coaching. Now that said, I'm 66 years old now, and I have learned so much about leadership. I was a leader before I was 20, Morag. So I've been in the leadership game. I've been in front of the formation or at the end of the table a lot during my life. That said, once I started teaching and coaching executives, not a week goes by that I don't read something, hear something, and like, how did I get, I've got over 45 years experience in leadership. How did I never hear that? Learn that technique. So the journey's never over. I want to hear your thoughts on that. And then secondly, you mentioned about, Morag, I talked too much, I should have listened, or whatever the case may be. I have been put on the spot several times. Mike, what's the one thing you wish you got earlier in your leadership career? And I didn't realize this until I was in my early 50s. The one thing that I wish I would have really gotten better at was listening, really listening. I wasn't a bad listener. I let my people talk, but like so many people, I often listened, not to really listen, but listen to wait for him to shut up because I already got the answer formula. I already know what I'm going to say. And I got exposed to a couple executives who were superior at listening. So I want to get your thought on that. First of all, the journey's never over. And I agree with you. And then secondly, What's your thoughts on truly the art of listening? Because a lot of people don't realize that there's science to it. You got to listen. What is your opinion? And all that's the science.
So my kids and my husband will tell you that I don't always listen deeply. Certainly when I'm at work and the kids would come in when they were younger and go, wah, 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 and I'd just go, yes. And then they'd go away. And then I could get back to the we whatever I was doing. Yeah. And then my husband would say, did you just tell Christopher he could? I have absolutely no idea. He just like, yes. So I think we are all guilty of either listening to reply or listening and then listening to the thing in my head versus what is actually coming to me. And so a real skill is to be able to lean in and remove all the distractions, to be entirely present. And if you can master that skill of being present for the person, listening to what they're saying, watching the body language, listening for what's not being said, that's how you get to the do I care about you, the high trust that we were talking about earlier on. And it's a choice. It's a choice to switch off all the tabs. It's a choice to put the phone on mute and face down. It is a choice to remove anything that we think below the camera, especially, oh, I can do this. But trust me, as soon as your eyes go away, I know you're multitasking. I know you're trying to do an email. So stop it. Stop it. Because you're doing a disservice, not only to the person in front of you, you're doing a disservice to yourself. Yeah. Oh, I got all feisty there.
Yeah, no, I know. I love it. In your face. I mean, that's the way it is. I agree entirely with you. Well, listen, I think after hearing you, people are going to buy your book and they're going to, it's like you say about, diet and exercise. I want to be an ally, and so assuming that they want to be, off the top of your head, what are some of just a few of the most common yet easily avoidable mistakes that people make when they try to adopt and project an ally mindset? They're going to make
it too much too soon.
Okay.
So think about the relationships. Who are you dependent on for your success at work? And just pick one. And then set up a call. Say, hey, I was listening to this podcast. I was reading You, Me, We, and talking about the importance of relationships. And I'm just curious, what 3 words would you use to describe what it's like to work, for us to work together? So be curious. And then just ask, well, what's one thing? What's one thing I could do to help you or to help us to be more successful together? And then just say thank you.
Yeah.
So keep it small. Get your training wheels on. Make that a habit. And then you can add other things to the to-do list. But one thing, and one thing is just simply asking what's working, what's not, and what's one thing I can do to help you and or me or us to be more successful.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to ad lib here and put another statement out. I am obviously a lifelong student of leadership, and I have a library full of probably a couple of hundred of antiquarian leadership books. I collect leadership books that 150 years old, 100 years old, 75 years old. I find them on eBay. Mm-hmm. And this isn't going to surprise you, Morag, because you're of the realm, so to speak. But I look at a leadership book of 100 years ago, and technology has changed. Even the English language has changed. Mm-hmm. But the fundamentals that they're saying, it's the same. It's the same. It's because, to our earlier conversation, human nature has not changed and will not change. So that informed me. I didn't look at Dale Carnegie's book until early 50s. Mm-hmm. And I fancied I was a good leader. Marine Corps is known for good leadership, especially leadership training and development. I didn't know Dale Carnegie, and of course he wasn't. And what I realized was there's a lot of commonality. My book, Dale Carnegie's books, Drucker, Lencioni. Mm-hmm. Not that I place myself in the same category as them. Leadership fundamentals, and one of those is listening and important, developing relationships in a 360-degree manner. Any thoughts?
Well, here's what I know, and I do this regularly when I'm doing keynote presentations. If you Google the word leadership, you will end up with billions, literally billions of results, of which you and I have contributed. So you're all welcome. But it's not very useful. But if you even start filtering to great leadership, or as I do, freaking awesome leadership, and forget the G and put up, you still get a million results. And so what I tell the leaders that I'm working with, yes, I've written 3 books on the subject of leadership. However, the only definition that matters is yours. If you cannot articulate what it means to be a great leader for you, how do you know if you're living up to it or missing the mark? And if you can't articulate it, how can you ask others for feedback on how you're doing? And if you can't articulate it, how do you hope to coach and mentor the leaders that are following you to reach their goals and aspirations? So take what you read from me or Patrick Lencioni or any of the other fabulous thought leaders, read them, but then create your own definition. Take what works for you, adapt what might work for you, discard what Morag Barrett says that you say, that'll never work here, but call me first because I can probably show you where it might. But you need to be able to define it for yourself. And that's the look up bit. Then you need to show up consistently and role model it. And then you need to ask yourself, did I do my best?
Yeah, I love it. Well, our time is coming to a close here, Morag, but I cannot let you out of here without asking you the fantasy question. If you were able to bring back one leader from the past, spend a day with that person, who would it be and why?
Well, because I'm feeling a little feisty, I'm going to rewrite the exam question and I'm going to bring forward a fantasy future leader. And that would be Jean-Luc Picard of the Starship Enterprise, who is to me the most amazing leader. And to boot, I would get to have lunch or dinner with Sir Patrick Stewart as well. A double win for me.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, listen, thank you for that. No one's ever said that before. No one's ever leapt into the future. So I like that. And last but not least, I think people are going to want to, first of all, where can they get your books? Secondly, how can they reach out to you, potentially hire you and bring you into their firm?
That would be delightful. First of all, the book and books are available from your favorite retailer. So wherever you buy your books, you can find it. If you can't, then connect with me on LinkedIn and I answer all of my own messages. So connect with me there. You can follow my leadership writings and ask me a question and I will point you in the direction of a resource or help coach, mentor you. And then finally, at the bottom, you can see my company name, SkyeTeam, SKYE, team.com. And you can learn more about me, Eric, and Ruby, our keynotes, our team programs, coaching, and leadership programs.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, this has been a great episode, Morag. I know you're busy with the launch and all that, so it's not lost upon me that taking an hour out of this busy time, especially at this time, is gracious of you. And I selfishly ask that you consider coming back again in the future. It's been delightful.
I'd be honored. And if I may, I will bring either Eric or Ruby, because then you get a double whammy of energy and to see all of this in motion.
I'd love that. I hadn't thought about that, but yes, I would love that. So I'll take you up on that. I'll take you. You'll hear from me. So again, thank you so much. It'll be a great episode, and best of luck with the book launch.
Thank you, Mike.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe, rate, review, and recommend to your friends. Please visit our website at fidelisleadership.com and sign up for our leadership newsletter. Until next time, remember the words of the ancient Greek philosopher Pericles.
What you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but is woven in the lives of others.